I was sitting at my desk, covered in papers so meticulously laid out that it seemed the very existence of the company depended on their accuracy, looking over quarterly sales reports, struggling to concentrate on the tiny numbers flashing before my eyes, when my phone rang. The loud, shrill sound pulled me out of the frantic stream of thoughts I had been immersed in since the morning, and, reluctantly glancing at the screen, I saw a name that usually brought me a warm wave of calm, but which for some reason this time brought a strange sense of unease. Mom, it flashed on the screen. My fingers hovered over the reject button for a moment, almost going to voicemail, because at Sportmax, the sports equipment company where I'd been working as a regional sales manager for 9 years now, Thursdays were always a day of chaos, fuss, and endless emails, calls, meetings, tasks, and my internal timer was telling me that there was less than an hour left until the evening Zoom with the management in Chicago. But something, perhaps an almost imperceptible shiver of intuition that had recently come to me more and more often at moments when events required special attention, made me press the green button. "Hi, Mom. What's wrong?" Her voice, as always gentle, but this time too animated, sounded on the other side of the line with an almost childish haste. "Rita, dear, I'm so glad I caught you. Are you free this Saturday night? Your father and I would like to invite you to dinner. Around 6. I'd love to talk. And before we continue, write in the comments what city you're watching this video from. Enjoy." And before I could ask any of the dozens of questions that immediately flashed through my head, she hung up. I was left sitting with the phone in my hand, staring at the black screen where her name had been glowing just a second ago, wondering what the hell was going on. Mom certainly seemed worried, but she didn't say anything specific, leaving behind a strange feeling of unease, as if there was something unsaid in the air that I had to figure out. My first thought was, maybe this has something to do with our upcoming trip to Italy. In just 2 weeks, my family and I were scheduled to fly to Rome and then embark on a short but carefully planned trip to the southern regions of the country, 10 days in sunny, lemon-scented, sea-breezy Italy. I'd been dreaming about this vacation for months, in between meetings, late dinners alone, and sleepless nights at the computer. In fact, the idea for this trip was my own. I'd been working non-stop for the past 3 years, 60 hours a week, trying to stay afloat in a world where women's success is still often met with skepticism, especially when it's accompanied by grit and determination. I had enough free time to allow myself a break, and finally had enough money in the bank to make one generous, truly meaningful gift to my family. Italy has always been on my bucket list, its endless streets hidden behind shady arches, food smelling of basil and fresh cheese, history breathing from every wall, and art frozen in stone. I spent weeks researching hotels, booking cozy apartments with sea views, and planning itineraries. My parents, Ruggiero and Justina, are both retired now. My dad worked most of his life in construction until his back gave out 5 years ago, and my mom worked as a secretary in a law firm until she was laid off during a restructuring. Since then, they have barely made ends meet. I knew that such a trip would be impossible for them without my help, and that is why I decided to pay for everything myself: flights, hotels, food, excursions. The entire program cost me $9,200, but seeing them happy, even for a short time, was worth every penny. My younger brother, Carlos, who had just turned 26, was joining us. He was still trying to find his place in the world, working part-time at a grocery store and renting a crappy apartment downtown whose walls he said were held together by nothing but a spider and goodwill. I had been helping him with rent and car insurance for 2 years now. He was a kind, slightly naive guy who just lacked direction. For the past 8 months, he had been dating a girl named Emma. I had seen her a few times at family parties and birthdays. She seemed nice, with perpetually manicured nails and a slight tendency to be pushy, especially when it came to gifts, vacations, and other must-haves. She worked at a nail salon and seemed to have a penchant for expensive things, as if she wanted to escape her own world as quickly as possible, and she was dragging Carlos along with her. Saturday came, and at about 5:30 I left for my parents' house. The sun was setting, painting the houses in a warm amber light. Mom opened the door with a wide, if slightly forced, smile, and I immediately felt that there was something unclear in the air. Dad, as usual, was sitting in his chair by the window, with a gas heater on his lower back, and he waved at me in a friendly manner. Carlos was there with Emma. They sat next to each other, whispering, exchanging glances in which there was some secret, barely noticeable mockery, as if they already knew something that I did not. We sat down at the table, which was set surprisingly elegantly, Mom's favorite china plates, old silver, wine glasses that were usually taken out only on holidays. Dinner was delicious, as always. Mom made her signature lasagna and chicken with lemon. We talked about trivialities, joked, discussed the upcoming trip, but at some point Mom put down her fork, cleared her throat, and silence fell in the room. "Rita, dear," she began, and her voice trembled, "your father and I wanted to talk to you about something important tonight." "What happened? Is someone sick?" I asked, suddenly alert, and the tension in the room seemed to thicken, as if the words that had to be said hung in the air, heavy as lead balls. No, nothing like that," Dad answered, shifting awkwardly in his chair, trying not to meet my gaze. "It's about the trip." And the moment he said that, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and for a second I thought it was all just a misunderstanding, that maybe they'd forgotten their passports or mixed up the dates, because the worst-case scenario flashed through my head: cancer, an accident, something irreversible. "Oh, okay," I said with a slight smile. I was starting to think that someone had serious health problems. "What about the trip?" "Well, the thing is," Dad continued, his voice growing tense, "Emma's coming with us." I looked around the table in confusion, trying to figure out what the problem was, because it didn't sound like something impossible. "Okay," I began carefully, "she can book a seat on the same flight and a room at a hotel nearby, or even ours if there are any available." "That's right," Mom said quietly, but with some special heaviness in her voice. "We checked. There are no more free seats on our flight, and the hotel is fully booked for those dates." I frowned, feeling myself sinking deeper into some strange, viscous bewilderment, in which each phrase only added to the confusion. "Well," I suggested carefully, "she could fly out the next day and stay at another hotel nearby." Carlos, who had been silent until then, suddenly raised his head sharply, and I saw his face flush red with tension. "I don't want Emma to live anywhere else," he said, almost defiantly. "I want her to be in the same room with me." I froze, trying not to give in to the first irritation that was burning me from the inside. "Okay," I said slowly. "So what exactly do you want from me?" Mom took a deep breath, as if she was gathering the courage to say something difficult, something she had been going over in her head for a while. "We decided that Emma will take your place on the trip. She will use your ticket and your hotel reservation." The words hit me like something sharp and cold had been stabbed into my chest. I looked at them, disbelieving what was happening, hoping to hear joke, but instead my mother continued, her eyes downcast. "We've already sorted everything out," she said, as if it were something ordinary, as if I were just a figure on the schedule. "Dad and I will take the rooms that were reserved for you and Carlos. And Carlos and Emma can stay in the one that was reserved for us." I sat there, paralyzed, in complete shock, trying to process everything I'd heard, but my mind refused to obey. "Wait," I finally managed to say, "are you trying to kick me out of the trip I paid for?" At that moment, everyone at the table frowned, as if I'd said something rude or inappropriate. "You make a good living, Rita," Carlos said coldly, and there was neither gratitude nor sympathy in his voice. "You should be ashamed of yourself for blaming us for money when we're talking about family." I couldn't believe my ears. "Carlos," I said in a breaking voice, "I paid for this whole trip, for all of you, $9,200. A deafening silence fell over the room. No one answered, no one objected, no one expressed regret. Mom finally spoke again. "If you really want to go to Italy, you can do as we suggested earlier, buy a ticket for the next flight and book a room in another hotel." And suddenly, laughter. First a light giggle from Mom, then a quiet chuckle from Dad, Carlos's grin, and even Emma covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hide a satisfied smile. They thought it was funny. That I was excluded. That I was replaced. That I was the odd one out. I forced a weak, broken smile and nodded, even though I felt something fundamental inside me begin to crumble. For the next hour, I sat at the same table, nodding mechanically as they animatedly discussed plans, restaurants they wanted to try, places they wanted to see. They did it as if I wasn't there, as if I had long since ceased to be a part of their lives, their family, their expectations. No one noticed as I quietly rose from the table, put on my jacket, trying not to make a sound, walked to the door, and without turning around, walked outside. The cool evening air touched my face, sharp as needles, and as I walked to the car, my hands shook as I tried to pull the keys out of my pocket. I drove to my apartment complex, parked, and sat there for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel, my heart pounding so hard in my chest that it seemed like the neighbors could hear it. Finally, I got out of the car and walked slowly to my room, feeling like I was walking through a thick, viscous fog. I opened the door, went inside, and without turning on the light, fell onto the couch, where I burst into tears, loudly, convulsively, for a long time, until the tears dried up, leaving behind only pain, heaviness in my chest, and emptiness. I fell asleep in the same clothes I had worn at family dinner, curled up like a tired animal. When I woke up on Sunday morning, the sun had long since risen, my face was puffy, and my back ached from sleeping in an awkward position. For a moment, I forgot what had happened, and then it all came back, covering me with a wave of shame, loneliness, and pain. My phone was shaking on the coffee table, vibrating again, a name flashing across the screen, Mom. Part of me wanted to ignore it, the phone vibrating insistently on the table, the familiar font of the name flashing across the screen, the voice I knew from childhood that now seemed to belong to a stranger. But the other part of me, the part that still hoped, however illogically, that there was something left in my mother of the warm, caring woman who had held me when I cried over a broken doll, that part thought that maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe they had talked and finally realized how unfair and ridiculous their plan had been, how cruel they had been to exclude me from their own idea, into which I had invested not only money, but a piece of myself. "Hi," I said, trying to sound calm, as if I'd just woken up from a normal, unremarkable night. "Rita, it's good to have you on." "You're awake," my mother said cheerfully, her tone the same as the days she'd called to ask if I'd gotten the chicken on sale at the supermarket. "Carlos and Emma are planning an engagement party for when we get back. We were hoping you could pay for it." I almost dropped the phone. My throat felt dry, like the air had suddenly become too dry. "What?" The word escaped my lips, because my mind needed time to process the absurdity of what I was hearing. "You know, this great Italian place downtown," my mother continued, with the same ease with which one talks about ordering pizza for dinner. "Emma has been dreaming of having a party there. We thought it would be such a nice gesture from you. You're always so supportive of the family, after all." I sat there, clutching the phone, unable to utter a word. A nice gesture. After being cut from a trip I'd paid for. After being laughed at dinner, as if my humiliation was something to joke about. And now they expected me to forget everything and make it a gesture. "Of course," I heard myself say. "Of course I'll pay." "Oh, great." Mom cried, genuinely happy. "I knew you wouldn't let us down. Emma will be thrilled. And by the way, can you give Emma your number? She'd like to discuss the details with you." "That's so thoughtful of you, dear. I'll text her right away." And she hung up. And I stared at the phone, and for the first time since last night, a smile appeared on my face. But it wasn't a happy smile, no, it was that special smile that comes when you finally stop fighting for a place at the table, for someone's approval, for the love that's owed to you but will never be given. In that moment, an idea was born in me. Quiet, cold, clear as the click of a lock. A plan that would show them what disappointment was. What it was like to be not just forgotten, but betrayed. The first thing I did was call the hotel in Italy and cancel all the reservations. Every reservation. My numbers, their numbers. Everything. The cancellation fee was about $300, but I didn't hesitate for a second, it was the price of justice. And when I hung up, I felt relief for the first time in a long time. That was step one. The next day, just as Mom had promised, Emma called. Her voice was excited, almost ringing with delight. "Rita, hi. Your mom gave me your number. I'm so excited about the party." Me too, I replied, controlling every nuance of my voice. Want to meet up and discuss ideas? Yes. I have so many ideas. Can we meet at that coffee shop on 5th Street? The one with the delicious pastries? I got to the coffee shop early, ordered a latte, and chose a table by the window. Emma showed up on time, beaming, wearing an outfit that probably cost more than Carlos had earned in the last 2 months. She had that designer bag slung over her shoulder. I recognized the brand immediately, with its distinctive gold clasp and glossy leather. I'm so glad you're doing this for us, she whispered as she sat down across from me, with a smile she thought would melt anyone's heart. I know you pay for everything in Carlos's family, so I figured you'd be willing to help us out. The way she said it, so casually but with a hint of pretension, struck a deeper chord than I'd expected. As if having money automatically made you a wallet, as if being kind was an obligation rather than a choice. So, I said, still smiling, what kind of party are you imagining? Oh, I want it to be really special. Her eyes lit up as she spoke. Like something everyone will remember forever. I think there will be 50, maybe 60 guests. There has to be live music, not just a DJ. And the food has to be incredible, wow. I nodded, looking at her with genuine interest. That sounds great. I want fresh flowers everywhere. Not plastic. Real roses, lots of peonies, maybe orchids. And of course, a professional photographer. And, I've always wanted a chocolate fountain. A big one. I see, I said, watching her take out her phone and start scrolling through images. That Pinterest chart, isn't it amazing? The flowers are expensive, like $2,000, but it's worth it. It's a special day. Definitely worth it, I agreed. And the band I want charges $1,500 a night, but they're amazing. I heard them at my cousin's wedding, and it was just magical. I mentally tallied everything she was saying, making quick but precise mental calculations that had been honed over the years by constantly working with budgets and reports and client requests, and the more I listened, the clearer it became. This party, as Emma envisioned it, was going to cost at least $8,000, and with all the ands that would be great, maybe more. She was consumed with her dreams, unrolling them before me like a scroll that no one dared cross out. You know what would be really special? Emma continued, with that glint in her eye that comes from someone who thinks every whim is a genius idea. If we could have champagne for the toast. Not just regular champagne, but real, click what or whatever it is. I'm not really into it, but you are, right? That's a great idea, I said, nodding, not letting my expression betray my true thoughts for a second. What else? I encouraged, watching her lean over the phone, her ivory nails flashing. Well, obviously I need a new dress. Something that says, I'm a bride-to-be, but not over the top, not a wedding dress, I saw the perfect one at Nordstrom. It's $400. I just thought that since you were paying for everything else, if it was too much, I'd understand, she said with that forced modesty that was more irritating than touching. No, it's okay, I replied softly. I want you to have the perfect dress. Really? You're the best sister-in-law in the world, she exclaimed, touching my arm as if we were in a real sisterly bond. We spent almost another hour discussing the details, from the signature appetizers to the gold-flecked desserts, from the fresh flowers in the Tuscan garden arrangements to the lighting, which Emma insisted should be soft, like in the movies. She wanted everything to be really high-end, so that every frame in the photos would scream luxury, opulence, and how well she had arranged her life. By the time we finished talking, I was pretty sure the whole thing was going to cost at least $10,000. This is going to be the best engagement party of my life, Emma said as we walked out of the coffee shop, her heels clicking softly on the sidewalk. I can't wait to post it on Instagram. All my friends are going to be so jealous. You should, I said with the most genuine smile I could muster at the time. Let everyone see what an amazing party this is going to be. That night, she sent me a link to her Instagram post. I clicked it and read, OMG, you guys. Carlos's amazing sister is throwing us the most incredible engagement party ever. Live music, gourmet food, champagne, everything. I honestly can't believe how lucky I am to be marrying a guy from such a generous family. This party is going to be legendary. I can't wait for you to see it." The post had already collected dozens of likes and comments. Her friends were writing about how lucky she was, how excited they were, how they dreamed of getting to such an event. I took a screenshot and saved it to my phone. Then I put it aside and laughed, loudly, until my sides hurt. Laughter flowed out of me like an open faucet, pure, crazy, liberating. 2 weeks. Exactly 2 weeks left until their flight. 2 weeks for them to anticipate paradise. 2 weeks for Emma to shine on her social media like a queen who has everything under control. It was fun. Unbelievably fun. The next 2 weeks flew by. I worked, met with clients, laughed with colleagues, and at the same time almost nothing was heard from my family. Carlos wrote to me once, a short message thanking me for paying for the party, in which there was not a single word about the trip, the hotel, or me. My mother called one evening, concerned that I seemed distant, and I told her I was just really busy, and inside I thought maybe for the first time in a long time it wasn't a lie. Emma, meanwhile, kept sending me posts, ideas, diagrams, and photos, each more expensive and lavish than the last. 3 days before they were due to leave, I made one more important call, and canceled their return tickets. The airline charged me a commission, of course, but I paid it without blinking an eye. It was the final touch. Now they would be stuck in Italy with no way to get home unless they bought new tickets with their own money. The night before they were due to fly out, I barely slept a wink. Part of me felt guilty, really guilty, because these were my parents, my brother, the people who had raised me, helped me through school, helped me through my first steps into adulthood, who had been there for me on those very days when I felt lost. But then I saw that dinner table again, that moment when they laughed, when they saw me as a problem, not as a daughter, a sister, a person. And the guilt disappeared, dissolved like fog in the morning sun. Their flight was scheduled for 6 in the morning, which meant they were scheduled to leave for the airport at 4. I volunteered to drive them, partly because I wanted to see them off, to see them leave, and partly because I wanted to be there when everything started to fall apart. My alarm went off at 3:30. I got up, got dressed, grabbed my keys, walked out of the apartment into the cool, dark night, and drove to my parents' house. They were all waiting outside with their luggage, looking sleepy but clearly excited about the journey ahead, like schoolchildren on their first trip to a new city. Emma had an enormous suitcase, pink and glittery, with stickers of lips and crowns on it, which seemed to weigh more than she did, and she struggled to drag it along the driveway, complaining about the wheels, getting stuck again. Mom, wrapped in her thick cardigan despite the mild June night, hugged me with the tenderness one would give to a long-awaited guest and whispered, "Rita, you're an angel for doing this. I can't believe you got up so early to drive us." "Anything for the family," I said with a smile that I hoped was genuine, and opened the trunk, trying not to look Carlos in the eye. The ride to the airport was filled with happy chatter, as if everything that had happened in the last few weeks had been a misunderstanding rather than a crack running through everything we had once called family. They talked about the Colosseum and how they were going to eat ice cream on the Spanish Steps. Mom dreamed of seeing the Sistine Chapel, and Dad reminisced about his youth, when he'd first heard of the Vatican and thought it was just a big museum. Emma, as always, was the center of attention, excitedly talking about her Instagram plans, about the photos she was going to take, with ice cream, with the Trevi Fountain, in her new dress against the backdrop of the Roman streets. Carlos spoke dreamily of the romantic candlelit dinners he had planned for her, and even showed me a card he was going to give her during one of their walks. When we arrived at the airport, I helped them with their bags, unloading Emma's suitcase with some effort, and they lined up at the departure terminal like a group of artists before their final performance. The terminal, despite the early hour, was overflowing with people just like them, with genuine delight on their faces, tiredness in their eyes, and dreams in their hearts. "Are you sure you don't want to come with us?" Mom asked, her hands still on mine. "We could have a coffee while we wait for the plane to board." "No, I have to go," I said, looking away. "I have an early meeting today." It was a lie. I was going to go home, crawl back under the covers, fall asleep, and spend the rest of the day doing exactly what I wanted, without regard for anyone else's wishes, whims, or expectations. My mother hugged me tightly and said, "You're such a reliable daughter, Rita. We're so lucky to have you. We can always count on you to take care of everything." The irony of her words didn't escape me. It echoed somewhere in the pit of my stomach, like a tiny needle prick. In a few hours, when they landed in Rome and discovered they had no reservations, they would finally realize how much they'd come to rely on me. I hugged each of them, saying with the same false warmth, "Have a wonderful trip. Goodbye." Emma was the last one to hug me. Her perfume smelled like sweet, almost cloying vanilla lotion, and she whispered in my ear, "Thank you again for the party. I promise it's going to be amazing. You're the best future daughter-in-law in the world." I watched them walk into the terminal, lugging their suitcases, surrounded by the noise, the announcements on the screens, and the smell of coffee from the nearby cafes. Carlos walked with his arm around Emma's shoulders, and my parents held hands like teenagers, as if they were experiencing the second spring of their love. They looked so happy, so excited about their vacation, so sure that the best was ahead of them. And I knew, in about 12 hours, everything would change. I went home and went back to bed, hoping to sleep, but sleep did not come. Instead, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining them landing in Rome around midday local time, smiling as they inhaled the humid Mediterranean air, grabbing their bags and heading to the hotel to check in, freshen up, and begin their adventure. That's when they'd find out their reservation had been canceled. At first, they'd probably think there'd been a mistake, a misunderstanding that could easily be fixed. They'd argue with the staff, demand a manager, call customer service. Carlos might swear, and Emma might feign indignation and demand compensation. They'd call other hotels, hoping to find something, but Rome was in the middle of high season, and all the decent hotels were already fully booked. By evening, they'd be panicking. That's when they'll try to call me. I'll get up, open the drawer of my nightstand, put the phone in there, and close it. Then I'll go for a run. I'll need to clear my head, burn off that nervous energy that was still coursing through me like electricity through wires. The morning air felt good on my face as I ran through the familiar streets of my neighborhood, feeling my body wake up, my thoughts clearing up along with my pulse. For the first time in weeks, I felt truly free. After my run, I took a shower, put on my favorite light jeans and a white t-shirt, got into my car, and drove to a coffee shop on the other side of town, the one hidden in an old house with red tiles and a hand-painted sign. I ordered a healthy breakfast of whole grain toast, a poached egg, and avocado, sat on the deck, squinting against the sun as the city woke up. Everything seemed different. The trees looked greener, the sky was taller and bluer, even the traffic on the street was no longer annoying but like music, a bustle I didn't have to belong to. I spent the rest of the day at my friend Sarah's house. We'd been friends since college, knew everything about each other, but I didn't even tell her the whole story. I only mentioned briefly that the trip had fallen through. "This sucks," Sarah said as we sat on her back deck, sipping iced tea with lemon and watching the sun slowly sink, painting the sky pastel shades of peach and gold. "But hey, do you want to do something fun instead? My boyfriend and I were planning a hike in the mountains this weekend, some fresh air, a campfire, stars. You should come with us." "Really? Would you mind a third wheel?" "Are you kidding? This would be great. We could go for a walk, roast a s'mores, drink hot chocolate, and just forget about our problems. For a couple of days, Rit. Trust me, you need it now more than ever." The idea seemed perfect. Almost healing. "My pleasure," I said, and for the first time in a long time, my words were not feigned politeness, but genuine desire. "Awesome," Sarah smiled. "We leave Friday morning, return Monday. Just pack light clothes and good hiking boots, you can't go without them." We spent the rest of the day in casual, simple conversation, discussing small things, gossip from her work, a new show she was watching, her boyfriend's plans to open a coffee shop, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace. No talk of family, money, debt, or wine. Just us, the evening, tea, and conversations that didn't hurt. Around 8 o'clock, I drove home. My phone was still in the drawer of my bedside table, where I'd left it this morning. I took it out, turned it on, and it immediately sprang to life under my fingers, vibrating, flashing notifications, filling with missed calls, voicemails, texts, as if the world had been waiting with bated breath for me to reconnect. All from my family. The messages flashed by one after another. Carlos, Rita, call me as soon as possible. Something's wrong with the hotel. Mom, Rita, please call back. There's been some mix-up. Dad, the hotel said our reservation was cancelled. We need help. Emma, oh, my God, Rita. They say we don't have any rooms. What's going on? 17 missed calls. I scrolled through the voicemails, furious, jumbled, screaming. Panic. Demands. Recriminations. And that's when the phone rang again. Mom's name flashed across the screen like a headlight in the fog. I waited a few seconds, took a deep breath, and answered. Hi, I said. Rita. Thank goodness. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you all day. I wasn't home, I answered calmly. What happened? The hotel canceled our reservation. They say they don't have a record. We have nowhere to stay, Rita. Actually, Mom, I said, my voice unruffled, I should probably tell you that I canceled everything. All the rooms. Return tickets. Everything. Carlos's scream echoed in the background, angry, shrill, and painfully familiar. You ruined everything. He screamed. How could you do this to us? Quite easily, I answered, still calmly. Just up and canceled. Much like you canceled my participation in the trip I paid for. Mom came on the line again. Rita, we are your family. We don't have money for new hotels or return tickets. You have to help us. No, Mom, I don't owe you anything. You made it clear that I am an ATM in your life. Well, the ATM is officially closed. I didn't wait for an answer. I simply pressed the end call button, then the block button. Then I blocked the others, Carlos, Emma, Dad. Then Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, everything that could be connected to them. And in the silence that followed, for the first time in many years, I felt peace. It was ringing, enveloping, almost physically tangible. There was no judgment in it. Just me and silence. 3 days later, I got a call from Aunt Helen, my father's sister, the only person in our large and rather noisy family whose eyes I'd always seen not condemnation but understanding. Rita, dear, what's going on? She asked, with that gentle reproach that doesn't press but cares. Your parents called me. They asked me to talk some sense into you. They said you were stuck with them in Italy. What happened? I took a breath and told her everything, from the dinner when they kicked me out of my own trip to Emma's final demands for the engagement party, where I was to be not a guest, not a sister, not a person, but a function. Aunt Helen listened silently. No sighs. No interruptions. Well, she finally said when I finished, that was harsh. But to be honest, I can't say they didn't deserve it. Your parents have taken your generosity for granted for years. And I think someone finally showed them that everything in this life has its limits. Do you think I did the right thing? I asked Aunt Helen, my voice quieter than usual, as if I didn't quite believe I deserved her approval. I think you finally stood up for yourself, she said, and there was more comfort in those simple words than in any of the fake concern I had become so accustomed to from others. It's time, Rita. It's been a long time. The next day, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, and my heart sank. All 4 of them. Mom, Dad, Carlos, and Emma. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces haggard and tired, looking as if they had spent the night on a bus full of screaming children and then walked for hours on a dusty road. I knew this conversation would happen eventually. I knew it would be unpleasant, maybe even humiliating, but I was tired of putting it off. I opened the door. We need to talk, Mom said, pushing past me into my apartment uninvited, the way she always did when she entered my life, as a host, not a guest. The others followed her, and I instantly felt the space I had recently felt safe in shrink, become tight, suffocating. Their faces were tense, their jaws clenched, their eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and something more dangerous, a sense of entitlement. For a second, I actually thought one of them might lose their temper, might yell, might hit. "You ruined everything." Mom screamed before I'd even closed the door. "We paid for our hotels with credit cards. We had to borrow from Aunt Helen to buy tickets home. This is a disaster. Our entire vacation was ruined because of you," my father added, his voice shaking with indignation. "For 5 days we fought with hoteliers, with the airline, ran around the city like abandoned dogs instead of enjoying Italy." Carlos stepped forward, pointing his finger at me as if I were a defendant in a court of law. "And after all this, don't even think that you'll get an invitation to my engagement party. You're not welcome there." I couldn't help but laugh. It was quiet, but so sincere and bitter that for a moment everyone froze. "Carlos, I wasn't going to pay for your engagement party anyway." Emma went white as a sheet of paper. "What do you mean?" Her voice shook. "You promised." I lied, I shrugged. "Just like you all lied to me, calling it a family trip." "But I already told everyone it was going to be amazing." Emma was practically crying. "I invited 50 people. I told her about the live band, the food, the champagne." "You sound like you're in trouble," I said calmly, looking her straight in the eye. "Rita, you can't be serious," Mom intervened again, her voice no longer angry, but desperate. "We're family. You have to help us." "Actually, no," I said. "I don't have to. I'm not giving you any more money. I'm not going to be your lifeline anymore. I'm not going to be an ATM with legs." They all looked at me like I'd grown wings or horns. I think it was the first time they'd seen me not give in, not submit. "You know what?" I said, heading for the door and throwing it wide open. "I think this conversation is over." When no one moved, I began to literally push them out, like a bouncer from my own house. Mom tried to say something, but I didn't listen. I just kept pushing them towards the exit until all 4 of them were in the hallway. They stood there, confused and humiliated. "Don't write to me unless you're ready to apologize," I said, and slammed the door in their faces. I locked the bolt, leaned against the door, and listened to them argue in raised voices for several minutes before they finally left. The next morning, I received a letter. "Carlos." I opened it without thinking. "Rita, after what you did to us in Italy and your behavior yesterday, we have decided to temporarily cease all contact with you. Don't call us, don't write, don't show up at our house. When you're ready to apologize and make things right, maybe we can think about talking to you again. Carlos." I read the letter twice. Then, without thinking, I deleted it. Instead of guilt or sadness, I felt relief. Real, pure, like the first sip of cold water in the heat. The weight I'd carried for years, the weight of obligations, expectations, the eternal need to be a good daughter, sister, sponsor, had finally fallen off my shoulders. That weekend, I went hiking with Sarah and her boyfriend Mark, as we had agreed. We climbed mountain trails, stopped at lookouts with views that were so stunning that for a second it seemed like these weren't just mountains, but a whole other planet, where people didn't demand, reproach, or blackmail. We sat by the fire, cooked simple food, told funny stories, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. At night, we lay in sleeping bags, looking at the scattering of stars above our heads, and I felt every cell in my body slowly but surely releasing tension. For 3 days, I didn't think about my family. Not about money. Not about duty. Not about what was necessary and right. Only air, fire, silence, and me, the one I was finally beginning to recognize anew. When I returned to work the following week, my energy was almost tangible, as if an internal spring, long held in check by the weight of other people's expectations, had finally released, and I plunged with new confidence into projects that had once seemed tedious but now inspired me like the discovery of new horizons. On Wednesday, my boss called me into his office, and as soon as I crossed the threshold, He looked at me with the same expression on his face that adults wear when they tell children good news. Rita, he began, I've been impressed with your work lately. You've shown initiative, your reports are impeccable, and your clients are praising you. How do you feel about your promotion to senior regional manager? It comes with a 30% raise, by the way. I couldn't help but smile, one that was both relieved and proud. I'd be very happy to, I answered reservedly, but inside I wanted to jump with delight. Great, he said, we'll make it official next week. A few months passed, and then one evening Aunt Helen called again, her voice still warm as a wool scarf on a windy day. I thought you'd want to know, she said. Carlos and Emma got engaged last weekend. Really? How did it go? I asked curiously, trying to sound calm. Well, she said after a moment, it was at your parents' house. Your mother made sandwiches and bought a store-bought pie. Very modest. Emma looked disappointed for most of the evening. I felt a tiny, sweet spicy twinge of satisfaction, but I said nothing, not because I didn't want to, but because I no longer felt the need to prove anything. Your parents told everyone that you weren't coming because of inappropriate behavior, she added, with a hint of irony in her voice. But honestly, most of the guests were confused by that explanation. It's been 6 months now. I'm doing great at my new job, making more money than ever, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like the money is going where I want it to go, not where others demand it. In that time, I've gone on 2 amazing vacations with friends, finally bought myself that car I'd always been putting off, and moved into a spacious, bright apartment where everything is arranged my way. I know my family probably thinks I'm a terrible person for what I did, but I also know that if I hadn't stood up for myself back then, nothing would have changed. They would have kept taking, asking, demanding, until there was nothing left for me to give. And I'm not going to wait for them to apologize. I'm too busy with my own life to waste it on people who only value me in bank accounts. Leave a comment on what you think of this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.